Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Soul and Screen. In this particular video, I will be doing a review on Tyler Perry's Zatima Season 1, Episode number 1 and 2. So let's just get into it. So for those who don't know or haven't tapped into Zatima yet, Zatima is a spinoff from the series Sisters, and what happened was there was a relationship between a character of Zach and Fatima, played by DeVal Ellis and Crystal Hazlett, that basically became the fan favorite of the show to me, and I want to point that and stretch that completely, that in my opinion, these two have become the very figureheads of both series, meaning to me they carry both TV series. With that being said, because of the relationship that was built in Sisters between Zach and Fatima, the way that it was written, they became so much of a phenomenon, and to the point where Tyler Perry created a separate show titled Zatima, which is the combination of the names Zach and Fatima, and created this particular series. With that being said, let me get straight into it. So the first episode, as most new series, is spent on character and storyline development. So in Sisters, you see Zach and Fatima navigating their relationship and things like that, the new dynamic, all of things, but it's always kind of tied into Karen, another character on Sisters, or in the relationship between Fatima and Andy, because Fatima works for Andy. In Zatima, it's basically like their life after work, after hours, on the weekend, that kind of thing. So first episode basically picks up in Fatima's apartment, because in Sisters season 3, Zach basically had a house built. He ran into some money, and he told Fatima that he wanted her to move in with him. He wanted to take care of her. And so she said, yeah. I don't know. I mean, I do believe she knew he was serious about it, but I don't know if she knew that he was like real serious, like as soon as the house is finished. And so that's basically where we pick up in Zatima season 1, episode number 1, is the house at Fatima's, her house is packed up. The movers are moving everything, and Zach basically is like comforting her, because he's looking and she's looking around the house like, oh my goodness, like what's going on here? And so he goes like, you ready, basically? And she's like, yeah, and he was like, what's the matter? You look scared. And she's like, I'm not scared. I just really want to know if you sure about this. And he's like, I'm sure, come on. And she's like, are you sure? Like, you don't think we're moving a little fast? And he was like, babe, basically, like, it doesn't matter how fast we moving, because we are that much in love with each other. So he's really reassuring her that, their relationship has been moving fast, and very much so at an accelerated pace, because they fell in love with each other really quickly. And Zach is just ready to solidify this. He's already brought up wanting to marry her in Sisters, and now they're doing this step as far as moving in with each other. And so he basically tells Fatima, like, just like picture it, we gonna be good, like picture it, it's gonna be me and you and me. And he's like, you see it? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, with a whole bunch of little Zachs and little Fatimas. And she's like, well, I don't know about all that, I don't know if I'm ready for that. And he was like, well, just picture it. She's like, all right, in the future, you got to give me that ring first. And he was like, I'm working on it. And she's like, all right. And then they kind of basically walk off saying, let's go get this chapter started, which is what Fatima tells Zach, and they leave. The scene picks up basically, before they leave, Zach is like, what you got planned? I got some plans for you tonight. And so she's like, oh, well, actually, I was planning on meeting with my girls. And Zach is like, your girls? You mean the girls that I haven't met? And Fatima was like, well, so what? Like, I ain't met your boys either. And he's like, oh, yeah. And so she was like, so, like I said, I'm going to go hang out with my girls, and then I'll see you when I get home. And he was like, oh, I like the sound of that. And she's like, yeah. And so fast forward, Fatima gets to the restaurant, to the club or a restaurant with her friends, like a bar, and they're sitting down, and they're basically her friends, Angela and Belinda, who are being introduced into as characters of the show, come in, and they basically ask her, like, where you been, because you've been missing in action. And she's like explaining, and Fatima goes, well, I've been working, and Angela and Belinda both kind of pull her card and was like, no, like, that's not what we're about to do. And she's like, what? And she was like, we know about that dude that you've been hanging out with, so let's go, let's get with it. So, and she's like, oh, okay. And he's like, so they're like, is it serious? And she goes, well, moving in together serious. And they were like, what? Like, you ain't never did nothing like this. And she goes, I know. And she goes, but yeah, basically it is that serious. And so they're like, wow. And so she was like, so they're like, well, when we gonna meet him? And so Fatima goes, well, if you guys want to come over tomorrow, then, I'll introduce you guys to him. And they're like, cool. And then Belinda was like, well, cool, because Angela can bring her dude over as well. And that way we can meet him in too. And so Fatima was like, well, dang, like, I guess I have really been missing in action, because I didn't know that Angela had a man. And so Angela is explaining, like, her relationship is really new as well, but okay, she'll bring him. And so they basically just agreed to, like, have dinner. When you fast forward into it a little bit more, you go to the other side of town where Zach, since Fatima isn't home, he decided to meet up with his friends. And so they're playing basketball. And basically, what happens is Zach is playing basketball with his boys, and they're being introduced. And his boys are Nathan and Tony, who have basically been Nathan, Tony, and Zach. Nathan, Tony, Zach have been friends since they were like kids, like probably Pee-wee, Pop Warner football kind of stuff. So probably around 9-10 years old. And then there's this new associate that is becoming friends with them because of Zach, because of a business connection. And his name is Bryce. Bryce is an Asian dude. Everybody else that I've mentioned are Black. Just FYI, to give some context for those who haven't seen the show yet. So anyway, he basically is playing basketball, and they like, so where you been? Like, and, after they playing basketball, and then they pull off to have a conversation. And so Bryce kind of lets it out the bag that Zach is in a relationship, and they like, oh, so that's where you been? And he was like, well, yeah. And he was like, kind of trying to play it off like it's nothing. And then Zach kind of lets it out again that not only is he dating somebody, he in love. And they like, yo, so Tony and Nathan are really coming down, kind of messing with him, because Zach has typically been known as a ladies' man. Like, he doesn't really settle down. Like, for those who do know about the character, you know that Zach is a player. He was with Karen, and he basically, ended up moving in with her and stuff, but she was basically kind of taking care of him, and he just was never in a place where he didn't like need to be kind of like with her, because of the fact that she was like, she gave him somewhere to live. Let's just keep it real. I mean, I'm not saying that he wasn't in love with her at some point, but what I'm saying is that she also provided a roof over his head and that kind of stuff. And she probably was a little bit of an elevation from the other chicks that he was messing with, which were completely hood, and Karen did have a level of sophistication to her. So with that being said, they, Tony and Nathan is like on Zach, and they like, man, so what's up? And he's like, what happens is you get with this girl and you get married, and then we just ain't gonna see you no more. And he was like, well, ain't nobody saying nothing about getting married. And they was like, well, good. And he was like, but we are moving in with each other. And they like, yo, you do realize that's what marriage is, like, getting, moving her in and all this kind of stuff. So they're doing everything that they can to kind of try to sway Zach's decision to rethink letting Fatima move in. And so with that, you fast forward a little bit, and Fatima gets home from meeting with her girls, and Zach home from his boys, and basically they talking about, what's happened. And she's telling Zach, well, my girls want to meet you, and he's like, well, my dudes want to meet you too. And and so she's like, you want to have dinner tomorrow? And he's like, you think we're ready for that? And she's like, well, so she goes and she sits in his lap, and she's like, I actually kind of wanted to redecorate a little bit. And he's like, I just got this place together. And she's like, yeah, but I just want to put a little bit of me on it. And he's like, really? And she's like, yeah, is that a problem? And he's like, nah, it's not. And then she's like, are you tired? tired. And he's like, no, why? You want me to start painting now? And she's like, no, you made me a promise. And so they have this little cute moment when he picks her up and throws her over his shoulder and take her upstairs. And of course, they have sex. And for those who haven't seen the show and want to watch it, just FYI, do not watch it with little kids because it's a little graphic. So let's just put it that way. The sex scene, and especially in the first episode of Zatima, is pretty graphic between them. And so if you don't really want to have that kind of a discussion with your kids, then don't watch that episode with them. Or unless you're going to watch the BET version of it, because I believe they edit it out when it's on the BET version, which let me put a pin here. If you don't really want to see edited versions of the TV show, then you might want to watch it on BET Plus. And I believe Paramount also shows the full version. It doesn't show like the TV or cut version. So anyway, getting back to it, they have sex. After they have sex, it kind of comes up with a different conversation where she's like, I love you. And he's like, I love you. I wish you really knew how much I do. And she's like, I think I got an idea. And he's like, and so she's like, I'm about to go get in the shower. And he's like trying to stop her. And he's like, wait a minute. Like, I'm not ready to go there. I kind of want to sit here and kind of cuddle a little bit, so to speak. And she was like, what? And he was like, what? And she was like, I got you. And he was like, what? She was like, you in love. And he's like, I tell you that all the time. She's like, yeah, but you know how y'all dudes are, y'all get y'all's basically. And then it's like, move, get off of me. And he was like, and he was like, I mean, yeah, I guess, sometimes we do that. And she's like, yeah, but you haven't done that with me. And he was like, no, you different. And so she's like, yeah, we'll see. And so she gets up and she tells him, so, tomorrow I'm going to go by the strip club to talk to your baby mama to let her know we need to get a DNA test. And he was like, okay, you think she going to do that? And she's like, I could be pretty persuasive. And so she goes and gets in the shower, and he's basically like, well, can I come? And she's like, come on. So most likely around 2 happened. The following day, Fatima's coming out of the house, and Zach is basically cleaning his car, and he tells Fatima, basically he buys her a new car. He buys her a new car, and she's just like, babe, you really got to watch your money. He's like, I don't really need you to kind of tell me to watch my money. She was like, I'm just saying. He's like, no, I want to do something nice to make you happy. And she's like, I am happy. And so he walks her over to the car and puts her in it. And, she tells him thank you. And he's like, you got it? And she's like, I got it. And he's like, I love you. And so she goes to work. And when she pulls off, his friend Bryce pulls up and tells him basically that he did find out that there is an investigation that is being, put together to come and look into where Zach got the money from. And the SEC is coming to investigate him. So basically, he tells Zach, why don't you let me help you get, kind of ready for it, and you move further into it. Fatima actually does go to the club to meet up with Zach's baby mama to tell her that they need a DNA test, and the girl kind of get an attitude with her. And Fatima, for those who don't know, come from a real gangster, criminal family who's known in real straight hood and everything. And although Fatima does have some sophistication to her, she does know how to ride the line, so to speak, and dive into both worlds if she needs to. So basically, old girl, the baby mama, tried to get smart with her, and Fatima hemmed her up and told her, if you're not at my house to take this DNA test, I'm really going to F you up. And so she leaves, goes to the house. Zach is coming downstairs, and Fatima is setting the table and just kind of letting him know that, first impressions are good, because he's like, you nervous? She's like, I'm not nervous, but I do want, you to make a good impression. And he's like, I ain't trying to impress these chicks. And so she's just like, whatever. And so then he tells her, well, just so you know, since you want to talk about the day, Bryce came over and told me about the SEC investigation. And she's like, Bryce? And so he's like, yeah. And so she is not really feeling Bryce. Now, here's the weird part about it. So for those who have watched Sisters, in Sisters, it was a dude named Jake. that was helping Zach with all this kind of stuff and investigation. Then somehow we got over here in Zatima and they changed the whole dude. It was a black dude who was Jake, and then we get over here to Zatima and it's now Bryce, who's an Asian dude, but he's doing basically taking on what Jake was doing for Zach in Zatima, and it's kind of like they completely just made him Jake, but gave him a new name and a new look and everything. So anyway, so Fatima didn't really trust Jake either in Sisters, and so you come over here to Zatima. She's now transferring that to Bryce. So she's like, Bryce, he probably did it, and Zach is kind of like, like, dude, like, just, I'm telling you, he helping me through this. Just give him a break. And so she's like, cool. So there's a knock at the door, and Angela is at the door, and Zach sees that the dude that she brought happens to be Bryce. So Angela's new boyfriend that she was talking to Fatima and Belinda about happens to be Bryce. So that kind of ended up helping Zach kind of relax a little bit more, because now he has, somebody there on his team. So this Fatima, basically they all introduce each other, and then Fatima and Angela walk over to the kitchen where they're talking, and she's like, oh, so Fatima tells Angela, so he your boyfriend now, you introducing him as your boyfriend? And she's like, yeah, it's new, but we gonna work it out. And she's like, all right, well, I guess we both kind of like, scoping out each other's dude tonight. And so they come back into the living room where Zach and Bryce are having a conversation, and Zach basically just asked Bryce, like, you didn't say nothing to Angela about what's going on with me, right? And Bryce reassures him and was like, no, whatever between us is between us. So they fast forward into the evening a little bit more, and they just having a little couples moment, and they're waiting for Belinda to get there. So Zach and Fatima, they smooching, and Angela's like, oh my goodness, I've never seen her like this, Zach, like it must be something. And Bryce kind of springs up, like, look like wedding bells to me. And then somebody knocks at the door, and it happens to be Belinda. When Zach goes over to open the door, he sees Belinda, and apparently him and Belinda had some dealings with each other years ago, where they Fatima, so Belinda, she's like, heck no, because Zach closes the door in her face, and Fatima's like, Zach, open the door. So she opened the door, and Belinda comes in immediately. Hell no, like, this the dude you talking about? And she's like, his raggedy ass, and she cussing him out. And Fatima's like, yeah, like, what's up? Y'all know each other? And she was like, yeah. And she was like, how do you all know each other? And Belinda just busts out, we had sex, but they had sex. But she said they Fuck. So, you know what I'm saying? And so she was just like, Fatima was like, what? Like, what the heck? And so Fatima's like, say, excuse me. And so then Bryce actually chimes in and repeats it. And so Zach is on Bryce's tail, like, why would you say that again? And so Angela realizes, like, oh, we need to have a moment. Like, y'all, let's go outside and talk about this. And so they go to the backyard to talk about it. Now, let me put a pin here. I do think it was really messy of Belinda, because as a friend, even if you do see yourself in this scenario, you don't put all of our business out in the street, because nobody knew that it was just me, you, and if it was just me, you, and, Angela, so to speak, then it would be fine, because most likely they talk about everything. And then Zach, but Zach is not the only male there. There's another person there who's Bryce, who absolutely does not need to know anything, because him and Angela are super new, and you just put your best friend's business out on the street because you kind of mad because Zach haven't contacted you. So anyway, I think that was really messy of Belinda. They go out into, on the balcony, and they start talking, and basically Fatima was just like, so what happened? Like, tell me how you know him. You said y'all had sex. Like, what, was y'all together? And so she goes, well, no, I was coming home from a trip from the airport. I met him at the airport, and, basically they just had sex. Like, it was a smash event. But she goes, but then, he ghosted me, and he wasn't calling me back no more. And so, okay, Fatima was like, how long ago was this? And she was like, it was like 2 years ago. Now, 2 years ago, but she's still this mad. You know what I'm saying? And so anyway, Angela was like, okay, you see, like, we don't got no problem. Like, that was 2 years ago. Now, let me put a pin here. That's real girl code, because here's the thing. If Fatima wasn't already in a relationship with Zach, moved in his house and everything, she found out that this was the dude who curved her friend, she probably wouldn't even talk to him, because that's just girl code. Like, I mean, if you're a good friend, that's like girl code. But this has happened after the fact. Fatima knows this dude. They in a full out relationship. They've been sleeping with each other. She moved in, like, they in love at this point. And then you guys had sex, not a relationship, sex, 2 years ago. So basically Angela was like, we good. Like, that ain't even nothing to bring no friendship over. Like, Belinda, you didn't have no relationship with them. Like, Fatima, let's just all move on. And she was like, yeah, but he had a girlfriend. Do you know about her and all that kind of stuff? And so Fatima was like, yeah, I did. So she was like, okay, well, so Fatima and Belinda and Angela walked back in the house, and basically Angela's like, okay, let's eat. And Bryce is like, we still doing this? And so she was like, yeah, we still doing this. And so Zach grabs Fatima's hands and he's like, you good? And she was like, yeah, I'm fine. And he goes, is she good? And Fatima rolls her eyes like, let's not push it. Like, she not good, right? So they get to the table and they're having dinner, and you can tell, like, it's some tension, but everybody, like Fatima and Bryce, are in a conversation with Angela, and they laughing, but Belinda and Zach are like giving mean looks at each other and flipping each other off, just being stupid. And so Fatima, of course, is seeing some of this, but she's trying to push past it. And then finally Belinda just breaks down and was like, is we gonna act like nothing happened? Like, we not gonna talk about this? Like, and so Angela was like, I don't think we should. And she was like, no, we need to. And so Fatima was like, you know what? Fine, let's do it. And so Zach was like, is you serious? She was like, yeah, like, let's just get it out on the table. And so basically Belinda, again, tries to bring up the past situation. And she was like, Fatima, like, this the kind of dude he is. And he had a girlfriend, and do you know she pregnant? And again, putting all her business out on the street in front of Bryce, who is not a person who needs to know about this, or is, like, again, she just putting all her best friend stuff out on the street instead of having this conversation with Fatima and possibly Angela after dinner. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so basically she forces the conversation. And so Fatima does tell her, yeah, like, really, actually, I do know about Karen. She was like, well, all I'm saying is I don't want him to do the same thing, because he gonna treat you, he gonna do the same thing that he did to me, to you, and then he definitely gonna do the same thing to you that he did to Karen, and I don't want that to happen. And that's basically what she's saying. That's paraphrasing, of course. And Zach basically was like, you don't even know what you're talking about. And Fatima was like, no, he's not. And then Zach just goes in. He was like, first of all, you don't even know nothing about me. You like judging me based off of that one experience with you. He was like, you don't know that I love this chick. I love Fatima, and she does stuff for me that Karen could never do. She make me feel like I got everything under control, even in situations like this. And he's literally listing all these things that Fatima make him feel. And so for all those Karen people who always try to act like Zach ain't really in love with Fatima over on Sisters, they obviously haven't watched Zatima, because he literally lists out to her best friend why he's in love with Fatima, and sex was not on the board. I mean, don't get me wrong. They both admitted that they have great sex. But what I'm saying is, it wasn't just sex that made him fall in love with Fatima. It was the things that she does for him and how she makes him feel. He said it in Sisters, she make me feel like I can accomplish anything, those kind of things. And that's something that Karen could never do. So he basically reiterates that to Fatima's friend, Belinda. And then he's like, you know what? I'm about to go. And so Fatima's like, Zach, and he's like, nah, I don't got the love if I say anything that, will be disrespectful. And Fatima had already kind of asked him, like, please be careful about what you say next. And so he gets up and he leaves. And Bryce goes with him, and it leaves Angela and Belinda and Fatima, where they kind of get into it with Belinda and just like, just you foul for this whole thing. Like, we was trying to have a good evening. We could have left it alone until just basically another time. But no, you had to ruin it because you needed to get your point across. And so, she apologizes and they leave. Zach ends up coming back after having a conversation with Preston, to the house. Fatima is getting ready for bed, and he's just like, so basically, are we good? And she was, she was trying to move it on. She was like, I left you some dessert downstairs. Did you see it? And he was like, yeah. She was like, did you eat it? And he was like, nah. She was like, why? He was like, quit playing. And she was like, I'm not. And he was like, so you not mad? And she was like, how can I be? Like, me and her have been best friends since college. We tell each other everything. So she had mentioned the situation with you. And he was like, okay, so you knew about it. She was like, yeah, but I didn't know it was you. And he was like, well, me neither. And she was like, look, Zach, I just really don't like being caught off guard by any of this. That's the real reason that I got an attitude. And so he's like, all right. And then he goes and he tries to kiss her and she moves her face. And he was like, I told you she mad. And she was like, I'm not mad. Like I said, I just don't like being caught off guard by this. And then she asked him, like, how many other women do I have to put myself through for this? And he was like, you want a number? And she was like, yeah. And he was like, so how many dudes have you been with? And so they have this little moment where, she's like really, really calling into question some real stuff. Like, you've been with a lot of women and I've put up with a lot already at the beginning of our relationship. How much more? And he basically does tell her a lot. And so they have this little banter moment and he asked her, well, if you want me to give you my number, then you got to give me yours. And she was like, let's just go to bed. And he was like, oh, so it's that many. And so she was just like, whatever, Zach. So they throw some numbers out at each other and she basically shuts it down, go to sleep. And then you get to the next morning where Fatima basically goes to talk to her friend Belinda and to see like what's going on. Like, tell her again, you can't be coming at my man like that, but I'm not going to let no dude come between us, but you cannot come at him like that. You can't be talking to him like that. Like, you going to have to figure out how to let it go and, that kind of stuff. And if you can do that and respect him and our relationship, basically, then she's good. She was like, now I just got to figure out how to get over you sleeping with him. But other than that, they had a pretty decent adult friendship conversation on how to bring this to a close. And basically she told, Fatima, all right, well, I just want you to be careful, but I respect it. And so they hugged it out and they done. Pretty much what happens, that's with them. And then the SEC lady contacts Zach or whatever and tries to set up an appointment and basically goes over to the house to meet with Zach. Nothing big happened there. It was just an appointment that was set up. The other thing that kind of happened before Fatima actually went over to meet with Belinda to have the discussion, Zach wakes up and was like, I know you're not trying to sneak out. And she was like, nope. She was like, I'm just going to work. I was trying not to wake you up. And he was like, can I get a kiss? And she was like, yeah, like, basically go brush your teeth first. And he was like, you still mad? And she's like, I told you I'm not mad. And so he was like, and she reminded him, she was like, but could you please make sure you home at a certain time today? Like, because we got that DNA test thing to do. And he was like, all right. And that was pretty much it. So that is basically season 1, episode 1 and 2 of Zatima. Let me know what you thought about it. If you've seen it and you're caught up. If you haven't seen it, I would suggest that you go back and see it. It's actually a really good series. In all honesty, watching Zatima made me want to go watch the rest or see how their relationship formed. And that's how I ended up watching Sisters. I did not watch Sisters first. Like, I tried to get through the first season when it first came out, and I really couldn't get past like the second or third episode of Sisters. So it wasn't until years later when Zatima came up and a friend of mine was like, you didn't like Sisters? Why don't you try Zatima and see if you like it? And that's basically what happened. I was watching Zatima. I loved it, and to the point where I was like, okay, let me go and see, like, how did their relationship form and get to cultivating and come to this. And that's how I ended up getting into Sisters. So if you didn't really kind of get into the first portion of Sister season 1, but you kind of were wondering where the hype came from, maybe watch Zatima and then go into Sisters. You might like it that way. A lot of people have, which is another reason why I say that the Zach and Fatima characters are holding up both shows, even though these new writers are trying to write other ways and cultivate and force certain things. We still got it on paper and a visual, so they can't make Karen a great person in a couple of seasons when we have receipts We got receipts all through sisters about how she did and how she was with Zach. And then now they want to kind of spin it. So that's another reason I don't let things get too high with my, emotions and all that kind of stuff when it comes to the Karen haters or the Karen lovers hating on Fatima and things like that, because that ain't what the TV show. You just like trauma bonded possibly with this character, or are showing way too much grace to this character for some other reason. But that when you watch the show and then you watch the other show like Zatima, then you understand where the fan base for Zatima is coming from. So with that being said, let me know what you thought about the episode. Let me know what you think about Belinda and her messy self in this. Do you think that Fatima should have called off the relationship, like based off of what Belinda told her after the fact, like after 2 years? Like, I think we might get into some more sister code kind of conversations as we progress into season 1 for sure, as we deal with some of the stuff that Belinda ended up doing. But let me know what you think in the comments. Let's get into a conversation. Feel free to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.